production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The future of the fairgrounds and Coliseum tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Jamita Swearingen from the Memphis City Council. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Marvin Stockwell is co-founder of Friends of the Fairgrounds. Thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
Chooch Pickard is with the Coliseum Coalition. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
And Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. Let me start. We've had you on before, Marvin. Now, in your role, you were with the Coliseum Coalition, now Friends of the Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to each of you and just talk to me about your ideal vision, realistic maybe, but ideal vision for the fairgrounds and the Coliseum.
Yeah. So I think what Friends of the Fairgrounds is doing is trying to not be prescriptive at this point. What we're trying to do is convene the stakeholders that are most immediately affected. So the organizations that are part on the fairgrounds or on an adjacent organization, and all of the neighborhoods, Orange Mound, Beltline, Cooper Young, Edwin Circle, Humes Heights, that Glenview, that are around the fairgrounds, and gather those immediate stakeholders and say, it's a blue sky. What would you like to see at the fairgrounds? So as much as I have my own pet ideas or what I think might be cool at the fairgrounds, our process is set up to not be prescriptive, but to be very open and just and have a series of unhurried conversations so that we can, from the very genesis point of reimagining the fairgrounds, we can say the people who are going to be affected most should have a say.
And Chooch, the Coliseum specifically, you certainly don't want it torn down. Do you all at this point have specific ideas of what you want to see happen there, or what?
Yeah, we've collected data and ideas from a lot of citizens around the city throughout several events we've had over the year. And there really seems to be an overwhelming desire to reopen it as an arena with most likely less seats than it has now. Something that would hopefully bring some of the shows that are now going down to Mississippi back into Memphis and bring the tax dollars back up here. But also, we want it to be open 7 days a week. So really think that there's some museum opportunities in there with different types of entertainment, with wrestling and basketball and music, and really there's a lot of opportunity for that in that building.
And Councilwoman, your take. I mean, you have to, you can dream big, but you also have to vote on taxes and spending and all those kinds of things. What do you want to see happen to the fairgrounds area, and what do your constituents want to see happen?
Well, as a city council person, it is my job to be among the constituents, to listen to their ideas, their visions. We were afforded the opportunity to take a tour through the Coliseum last week. Chooch and Marvin, they asked us, could we please get with the administration to open it up for viewing, to see the status of the building itself. We were allowed to do that. It was in pretty good shape. It brought back a lot of memories. I agree with Chooch. I would like for the tax dollars to remain here in the city of Memphis rather than going to DeSoto County. However, I am also conscious and concerned about it being a place where everyone in the community can enjoy it. Those in Orange Mound, those in Beltline, those in Cooper Young, those in Glenview.
Right.
So I would like for it to be a site for everyone to be able to enjoy, and all ages.
Yeah.
I like for it to be something where adults can enjoy as well as children.
Did some of the proposals, I'm not going to build, some of the proposals, ULI, the National Urban Land Institute group that came in a year ago, talked about, a water park, and there have been proposals for youth sports activities that are really kind of high-end, expensive youth sports, and then we've got a Coliseum that you would pay to get into. you just mentioned something, is there a need just for green space, just for parks, just for free access, just for all people of all kinds, that it isn't turned into just a paid entertainment zone? Is that part of what you're talking about?
Yes, and it's unfortunate that we had a venue where children could enjoy in the community, Liberty Land and some of the other sites. It's unfortunate that, it's no longer there, because now we have the same vision.
Right.
To reinvent a place where the children can have some activities as well as the adults 7 days a week.
Yeah, yeah.
The UOD, they did have some ideas, water parks, but big dreams, no finance to
Right, to pull it off.
really pull it off at this time.
Okay, all right. Bill?
So where do you think this falls in the line of city priorities, just coming out of the new council's first budget season? Where is this in the order of things and the issues that the council and the mayor deal with?
Well, we had a town hall meeting in District 4 not long ago, and that's one of the questions that one of the individuals from the Coliseum Coalition, Mike McCarthy, asked the mayor. Mayor, how can you prioritize the Coliseum, Tiger Lane, the Liberty Bowl Stadium? And he mentioned right now that was not among his priorities. The money was not there, but he had some other issues that he would like to resolve before he attacked that site. So going with the vision of the mayor, it doesn't seem like it's top on his list.
All right. And there's plenty to be done. Chooch, when you looked at the Coliseum from a technical standpoint, what did you see? What did your expert's eye tell you in terms of the Coliseum structural integrity and what kind of a job it is financially to bring it back in some form?
Structurally and even aesthetically, the building is in an incredible shape, inside and out. The entire HVAC system will probably need to be replaced. That's probably going to be the most expensive thing. We know that ADA is an issue. The building was shut down because of the lawsuit with the DOJ, and so that's got to be number one priority, is solving those problems.
ADA being American with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, we have started looking at the solutions to the ADA problems, and we believe we've got some inexpensive solutions that take care of all of those issues. And at the same time, a lot of that work will reduce some of the seating, but it'll increase access to the building, and so it's going to be a good balance.
Talk a little bit, you are an architect, besides being a member of the Coliseum Coalition, an architect, and some of the other projects you've worked on include?
Court Square Center, the Lincoln American Tower and Lowenstein Building, some South Main buildings, and currently trying to get the Marine Hospital over in French Fork.
So historic buildings and so on.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, back to Bill.
Marvin, you talked about blue sky, blank slate for the Coliseum, but you have the Children's Museum there, you have the Liberty Bowl there, and you have these tremendous crowds now that come because Tiger football is on the map again for the first time in a long time.
Right.
So how does future plannings mesh with what the Children's Museum wants to do? Because the first reaction that I got from Dick Hackett, the director of the museum, was, okay, well, first of all, ULI didn't talk to me. And second of all, if they had talked to me, I would have told them that if you put a water park where they generally envisioned it being, that it's really going to box us in here from what we're doing with the carousel and the carousel building and some of our plans in the future. And it's going to affect where people park, and they're already parking on the Parkway median when it's game day during football season. So where does that come in what your group is looking at?
Sure. I think that you raise an excellent point. It is a blue sky, but we have to consider what are the existing assets and what are the desires of the kind of organizational stakeholders. I have an open line of communication with both Dick Hackett and Steve Earhart and Harold Grader at the Liberty Bowl. And one of the things that we have to face honestly is parking. I talked to Housing and Community Development Director Paul Young, and he's very supportive of our process. But he said, maybe it would make sense somewhere along the line for the city to do a traffic and parking study. I told the folks at the Liberty Bowl about that, and they have really entered into the conversation in a really helpful way. So I made clear early on that there's no ducking the parking thing, and that is going to be, we have to take that into consideration, and we have to, among all the variables that we need to think through thoroughly, that is a big one.
Does the issue with Overton Park right now, does that sort of hang over your thinking? Is it, because you start talking about parking and different tenants and partners sharing a space. It's not just because I'm on the board of the Overton Park Conservancy. I just think a lot of people are thinking, boy, this sounds familiar.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And if you look at the process that gave rise to the Overton Park Conservancy, they got the Overton Park Study Group. It was an intentional time where they got together with the immediate stakeholders and got all the issues out on the table and formed a thumbnail sketch of a vision sufficient to plan for the future. I think we're on the same errand at Friends of the Fairgrounds, frankly. But it's all about getting the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, at the table, and then just facing the variables honestly and saying, how do we have to start with what would you just dream of? And then, of course, somewhere along the lines, that has to come down to earth. The rubber has to hit the road, and we have to tether that to reality and come up with the best plan.
Right, because you've got...
And we're not there yet.
And you've got multiple entities. We mentioned the Liberty Bowl, we mentioned Children's Museum, but there's also the Kroc Center has been very successful. Maxine Smith STEAM Academy is a school very much on the rise. I'm missing, I'm sure, a couple more. You've got the Coke bottling plant around down on the corner. So you've got a whole lot of stakeholders and people with potentially competing interests. But let's get back to money for a second. And what about funding? When we were talking about the building, Chooch, that it's in good shape, but it's going to need some work. Clearly, I think we have some photos we're showing that show. There's obviously some work. At a time when the city is unlikely to fund anything like this in anything more than a token way, if at all, where can funding come from?
Well, I'm inspired this week by the $12 million private dollars that were raised to light the two bridges. If we have the wherewithal to find that when there's no tangible gain for the city that we can count as far as money goes, I think we can raise private funds. And, I do think it'll have to be a public-private partnership because I think the city needs to maintain ownership of the building. But, back to where we were saying the building's in good shape. It's not in a condition that can't be mothballed for a while. We can take our time in planning for the Coliseum and the fairgrounds and do it right. There's no need to rush. We can take our time, find out what everyone really wants to do with it, and raise the money. On the same note, we found $16.5 million to put a parking lot in front of Liberty Bowl. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me that we can Tiger Lane. It doesn't seem that unreasonable to me that we can't find the money for the Coliseum, which would actually be bringing in income for the city.
Does it worry you? Some people have expressed concern, Councilwoman, that Mayor Strickland he's been very explicit in that he doesn't want to focus on big projects, Bass Pro, some of the ones in the past, maybe even Tiger Lane, some of the big kind of splashy projects. He says it over and again. He wants to be brilliant at the basics, roads, crime, balancing the budget, the basics of city government. I don't know that anyone would argue that the city shouldn't be brilliant at the basics, but does it worry you that there isn't more vision, there isn't more of an emphasis on big projects and big achievements?
The mayor, he has his priorities, but I also represent a group of individuals who are interested in building the Coliseum. I think it would be exclusive, and we would certainly be getting more in District 4. With that in mind, there are private donors that you can receive, private fundings that you can receive. I've had conversations with investors that would like to come in and invest within the Coliseum and would totally finance it. So I'm putting those individuals with the Coliseum Coalition and Friends of the Coliseum Fairgrounds. I am also making certain that they are able to meet with those individuals, to hear their ideas, to listen to their visions, to see if we can come, through mediation, come up with something where everyone could benefit. The dreams will be grasped, as well as the Coliseum being financed.
Yeah, okay. Bill?
So, describe for me the relationship of the fairgrounds in the past to the area, the neighborhoods around it, and what's kind of happened to that relationship. Because while we talk about city services, an amenity like the fairgrounds, which I think everybody who has a past with it looks back at fondly, it's almost an incalculable effect of that on a community when something like that connects to a community. So what do you hear in your district about the past of that space and what the future could be in terms of the neighborhoods and their development?
Most of them have some place within their lives where they have a personal touch with the Coliseum. May it be the circus that would come to the Coliseum, or graduations. Many say, well, I graduated from Coliseum. I would like to see it exist again. Concerts. One of the best concerts I ever attended was at the Coliseum, Diana Ross. It has so many memories. The fair. Everyone looked forward in going to the fair with the schools. They had fair day, and people would come from other areas, and it became a tourist site. So everyone they have a finger on the pulse of the past of the Coliseum. And they would like to see that reinvented. It became a part of the community. When you said Coliseum, everybody was involved, and it was close enough to walk.
That's right.
And that's the type of camaraderie and the type of site that we would like to reinvent within the community.
You were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that exactly what you said is is the feedback we're getting from a lot of our stakeholders, especially the people from the neighborhood surrounding the fairgrounds. They have so many great memories, and it ties into their desire for what they want the land to be in the future.
Right.
That's so they want spaces. They want places that they can take their family. They want it to be open and green. They want it to be safe. That's kind of the overarching. But there's also a big contingent or desire for jobs.
Right.
They remember the jobs that their teenagers had at Liberty Land that taught them responsibility.
Right.
I just can't tell you, it's been humbling to hear these stakeholders, how they did connect to that land and how they want to connect to it again. It's right there. It's within walking distance.
But your take on funding, because there are people listening to the conversation saying the memories are great and all these things are true, but still, how do we fund what we're going to do there? So
Sure.
what does Friends of the Fairgrounds say right now about funding?
Well, first of all, again, it's early, but I would say this. If you look at the arc of other developments in Memphis and the kind of like broader wind in our civic sails with Sears Crosstown coming online and the Chiska and Broad Avenue and just so many other things, the renovated Levitt Shell. You see, this is a time of not only opportunity, but civic optimism. And things are getting done, and even people who are more naysayer friends are starting to say something is up, and people are starting to feel like we can do this. Memphis is starting to believe it can do that. So gone are the voices that say you could never do that, because you can point to Crosstown Concourse and say, well, we did that.
Right. But is there, to that though, I mean, just to channel the naysayers out there, sorry, but I know some of them will say, well, look, if you build another space, an event, an entertainment space, a concert space, all you're doing is water. There are too many already. There's the Shell, and there's, FedEx Forum, and there are too many spaces. Maybe someday the Mud Island Amphitheater gets redone. What about that argument?
Well, there are no spaces between the 2,500 that we have at the Orpheum and the 19,000 at FedEx as far as indoor venues that can be used year-round.
Yeah.
So we see that as a positive thing, at least in Shelby County.
If you cut down the seats, are you cutting down the seats for the ADA requirement, going below 12,000, which is what it was for concerts? Are you going below that for ADA, or are you going below it because of the non-compete with the Grizzlies?
Well, the non-compete's kind of complicated because the 5,000 seats that people refer to in that actually has nothing to do with the Coliseum. It's if the city were to build a new one. Right. However, the Grizzlies kind of see it as they don't want that competition. And so, we would really love Councilwoman Swearingen to be encouraging the Grizzlies to come to the table with us and discuss. But certainly reducing the number of seats helps us with ADA issues. It actually helps us with some of the other life safety issues in there about the width of the aisles, and also would allow us to have a little wider seats with cup holders. And when you have less seats, you have less people, so you need less restrooms. You need less HVAC, you know, it's easier to heat and cool. So there's so many positives with balancing it.
Without the Grizzlies, I mean, if they don't come to the table, is this just going to languish? Or have they come to the table? I mean, you're saying they haven't.
There have been discussions with them, but not real come to the table talk about what they'd be, you know, totally on board with.
Yeah.
So that agreement was signed years ago under a different ownership actually, and it passed on to the new ownership.
Another question, but back to the 5,000 or so seats, and we talked about how concerts now go down to Lander Center in DeSoto County. So Shelby County residents would say, we want all that money up here, we want that tax money, we want it to be here. However, the competition between the two mean that some shows are going to go down there and some are going to come up here. Are there still just too many spaces, even though it's in a different state? The concert promoters are going to be, well, I can't do both, I'm going to go to one or the other, and doesn't that water down the effectiveness of the Coliseum at 5,000 or so?
I mean, I'm not a musician, but if I was, I'd much prefer to play in a music city with the history that Memphis has and that building has than to go down to some.
At what point, I'm putting you on the spot here as if you are a music promoter, I might as well. What have you brought in some of the music promoters? Have you talked to the concert people, the professionals? I mean, is that part of what the Coliseum Coalition is doing?
It is. I mean, we're really made up of a group of very diverse people that are coming at it from every angle, and there's a lot of different expertise, and we're constantly bringing in more people to have those discussions. The first thing was to see if the building was viable.
Yeah.
Now really will be the next steps, and we've began the process with some promoters.
Just a few minutes left. Councilwoman, would you like to see, I mean, is there pressure to put on the Grizzlies to come and the Grizzlies folks and come in and have a conversation with folks like you all about what can be done and what's doable?
I think it's imperative that we have established some type of a relationship with the Grizzlies, and I'm going to certainly put forth an effort where we can all get together and discuss the future of the fairground and the Coliseum.
Okay, Bill, just a couple minutes.
Is the city's initial estimate under an earlier administration of what it would take to make the building ADA compliant? Are you at a stage where now you know whether that number
was 30 million,
whether that number is valid?
In the next few weeks, I think we will be. The engineers are finishing up their studies on what a new HVAC system and new lighting, electrical and plumbing. And then I have a team of architects also working alongside me and code experts to determine what it'll cost to do the other upgrades. But I think it's significantly less than that. Just walking through the building, with a lot of people, they say, just power wash the thing and open it up. I mean, it really isn't. There's no peeling paint in there. The building is in great shape. And again, we can take our time because it is in great shape. The roof is not falling in. If the city can keep it secure, we've got time.
And I should note, I think this was from your story, Bill. Originally, when they were talking about ADA issues at the Liberty Bowl, it was going to be $40 million. It ultimately got done for $10 million,
I believe.
It was $10 million. So some of these early estimates, there's a history of them not necessarily playing out. Right. Go ahead.
Marvin, is one ultimate step for your group a conservancy?
That is one possible outcropping of this, yes. We just want to be focused on what the stakeholders want, and then somewhere along the way we have to start tethering that to reality. But again, I think this is a time where things are getting done. Back to your question about the funding, I think if we come up with a reasonable plan, if you look at, say, Crosstown as an example, in the end the city was asked to put in 7% of the overall project cost, and all the benefits were clearly mapped out. I think if we can do something similar, or if we can find an investor who will come in and foot the bill largely, then I think we're off to the races and we can get this done. Memphis can do this.
Councilwoman, we've seen several conservancies, city and county, that are formed, and every time that they're formed, there is this conversation that takes place with the legislative body, city or county, and that is, where does the conservancy stand and where is the council's relationship or oversight of this? Is that a concern with you, or is that something that can be worked out on this?
As you can see with the zoo and the Overton Park Conservancy, they are presently involved in mediation. And as long as individuals can communicate, I think we can always come up with a resolution.
And two things that were talked about. One was back in Wharton, Robert Lipscomb talked about a huge retail, 400,000 square feet.
Big box.
Is anyone talking about that? Do you hear any noise about that anymore? You don't, about the big retail residential
No,
type
not
developments?
since the Urban Land Institute panel of last summer said, actually, how about more like 15,000 square feet of smart retail? I've talked to several people, land planners, and I think people are starting to wrap their minds around that the fairgrounds should be largely public use.
Yeah. What about the youth sports facility? I mean, Kevin Kane was on the show a year ago, maybe with you. I can't remember. CVB. I mean, it's a big business, and you can get traveling sports groups and so on.
Sure.
Is that still on the table?
I think. Again, I don't want to be prescriptive. Maybe that could happen, but I think the youth sports trend has crested. I think if you do your research, you'll realize it's crested. So, is it part of the mix? Perhaps. I mean, keep in mind, Toby Field is a sports complex. And that's kind of in play. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.